to the Slip and Lip podcast with Barry and Ryan. This week is our second instalment of Repeal. We have a guest, Brendan O'Regan's here to join us. Brendan, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
Hi, well, I'm the Wicklow Conveynor for a group, Wicklow Pro Life, and we'd be loosely affiliated to the Pro Life campaign, and so we'll be campaigning on the upcoming referendum to protect the rights of unborn children. So that's where I'm coming from on that.
Yeah.
And I suppose in terms of principles, where it comes from is basically I'm in favour of human rights for all people. I think the human right to life is the most important one, because if you don't have the right to life, all the other rights are pretty meaningless. And I don't like to see any group excluded from that. I think human rights have to apply to all people. The unborn child has as much a right as anybody else to be considered. So, and all the Eighth Amendment does is declare that the unborn are equal to other people, specifically equal to the mother. So, and I think anything the government does has to be within that framework of equality. Otherwise, if you exclude one group, what's to stop anyone from excluding some other group sometime? So I think it has to be consistent.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say thanks very much for coming on, and obviously everyone knows it's like a massive touchy subject at the minute. We had a girl on last week who got a great reception. She was from the kind of pro-choice side of the debate, and we have obviously yourself on with the pro-life. But one of the things that I took from Amy's side of it was that we didn't really understand what was going on with the pro-choice versus pro-life. I didn't even understand the definitions really. And one of the things that I took from hers was that pro-choice, like it wasn't abortion, we want to have everyone to legalise abortion and stuff like that. One of the things that I learned was that they want to give the choice to women that if they need an abortion or something. And I found that was a big, massive thing. That was one of the biggest things that I took from it anyway. That it was just understanding that they're not looking for abortion to be legal. Well, in some cases, but it was just that they want to give women the choice to it. So what is your opinion on that?
Well, I think you're setting off there a right to choice versus a right to life.
Okay.
And I think the right to life has to be on top, because there's no point, if you don't have the right to life and somebody ends your life, well then you have no choices. Yeah. So, and I remember people say at some stage, well, if you don't want an abortion yourself, you don't have to have one. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case, because it's imposed on the baby. The baby doesn't get a choice. So one of the arguments the other side will use is, well, or even people who don't like abortion themselves, they'll say, well, I'm not in favour of abortion myself, but I wouldn't like to deprive somebody else of the choice. But the point is that with abortion legislation, you are imposing the choice on the baby. The baby gets no choice. The baby loses its life in every successful abortion. So I just don't think that's fair.
Okay.
For those now, we got when we first said that we were going to do this, the two sides, we get a lot of messages of men saying that men shouldn't have the right to even be talking about this,
or for, like, vote. Men possibly shouldn't have a vote in the upcoming referendum. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I really don't take that on board at all, for two reasons. First of all, it's a democracy, and if we're voting on a major social policy, well then everybody has to vote, otherwise it's not democratic. And secondly, when there's an unborn baby involved, there's fathers. Every baby has a father somewhere, and the idea that a father has no say in what happens to his own child, I think that's questionable and needs to be questioned. Like, why airbrush the man out of it when he was there at the start? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was, obviously this is a massive touchy subject, and it's been in the media an awful lot. There was one of the things that we came across just when I was doing a bit of research, that the pro-choice side were kind of saying that they were the pro-choice side were saying that the pro-life, when they were putting out their media and posters and stuff like that, and there was images coming up on the internet, or even that there were images of fetuses, and they weren't correct, or they weren't.
They were saying they were
misleading, or stuff like that. What did you come across this, or have you heard of this?
Yes, I have, but I was curious about it, and I asked myself, well, let's say there's a lot of debate at the moment about the 12 weeks. They said it'd be unrestricted abortion up to 12 weeks and very liberal abortion after 12 weeks, which a lot of people are forgetting about. But anyway, so I said, look, what does a 12-week-old fetus look like anyway? Mm-hmm. So I had to look on sites. Now, I went for the sites that are there for pregnancy advice, not for pro-choice or pro-life sites, just to see.
Just so it's unbiased.
And you can do it yourselves, or anybody out there can do it. And it's obviously a human baby. I mean, it cannot be anything else. Yes, it's small. Mm-hmm. It could fit in the palm of your hand. Mm-hmm. at 12 weeks, but it's so obviously a baby, so obviously a human baby.
Yeah.
So
I did
to try and deny that doesn't make sense to me.
I did it last night. I looked it up, and it was the Pro Life site had, a skin coloured baby. You can see, it, has eyelids, ears, nose, nostrils, lips, fully developed. It was just a smaller version, where you would have probably seen the same image as me of the more kind of, nearly vein coloured baby. You could still make out that it was, like a baby, but the start of a baby at that, like, do you think it's a little bit misleading with the posters that are being sent out?
No, I've seen lots of pictures, as I said, of babies at the 12-week gestation in the womb, and they look like babies. And if you don't like the ones that are skin coloured or whatever, if you look up the pictures where it's a scan, where the mother gets a scan of her baby at 12 weeks, you can see it's a baby. It's small, but it's so obviously a baby. And when some pro-choice people try to deny that, I don't think that makes sense. And you were talking last week about getting unbiased information and factual information. Now that is a challenge for people out there who are wondering. So that's why I went for the pregnancy advice sites to see what is the story here. And another useful help for people, I think, when they're trying to make their minds about this, is say where fact checking is done, right? So people make claims and fact checking. Now, of course, the fact checkers have to be neutral and open to questioning as well. But I came across a few there where, the pro-choice side are making a lot of the posters about Down syndrome. And I looked up, the journal did a fact check on that and found that the claim on the poster was largely true. They had one little quibble with the phrasing, but it is a fact that 90% of babies pre-diagnosed with abortion with Down syndrome in the womb are aborted, and it's up near 100% in Iceland. So, there is something on a poster. It can be checked easily, and if you look up the unbiased figures from official statistics and neutral news sources, that's what you find, and it's very worrying.
But even the 100% in Iceland that we touched on that last week, that was one Down syndrome child. It turned out to be because of the population of Iceland.
Yeah, but you can find it in other countries as well, like in the UK, where there's a much bigger population and it's up to 90%. And I suspect it will get worse because they're getting better and better at pre-diagnosing. They're having now this non-invasive test, which makes it easier to get. It'll start happening earlier, I'm sure, with scientific developments, and they can even do pre-screening well before the 12 weeks. So it's just a worrying trend. And I noticed there in The Independent there recently, and it's kind of a worrying statistic in a way, that in the last 2 years, according to the official figures, 83 women from Ireland had abortions because their babies in the womb had Down syndrome. So in one sense it's already happening with Irish women. It's unfortunate, but it's happening. And there was even about 6, I think it was, with spina bifida, one with cystic fibrosis. So the disabled are going to get a hard knock here. I think it falls disproportionately on them.
They will, unfortunately, but again, if there's a scenario and unfortunately, let's say a woman was raped in an act, walking down the street, she gets raped or something happens and it's terrible, and she is now pregnant with this absolute scumbag that's after going and molesting her or raping her or whatever, and now she has a choice to make. Either she's going to have the baby by this rapist, or what do you think that she should be given a choice instead of having to go travel over to Manchester, England, or wherever she needs to go? If she wants to have an abortion, should she be given the choice in Ireland if she wants to abort that baby by the rapist, or what is your opinion on that, or should she just have it? What is your own opinion?
I think that is the toughest case according to people.
Obviously that is really the toughest case.
And the way I would come at that is that the baby, if the baby is now in existence, if the woman is now pregnant, there's now a baby in existence, and to me, and I know it's easy for me to say, but it is adding another act of violence. If you go in and end the life of that baby, you are now ending the life of the baby, who is a totally innocent person in this whole thing.
So is the woman as well.
The woman is innocent, the baby is innocent, and the rapist is the person who should get all the punishment, severe jail sentences and so on. But to end the life of the baby who's innocent and then to just give a jail sentence to the rapist doesn't make any sense to me. But what needs to be done in that case, you don't just say, oh, you have to have the baby. The state has to offer all supports possible, whether it's financially by drain on the state. It wouldn't be that frequent anyway, but the state has to step in there and give every possible support to that person.
But if the woman wants support in a way that she says, I really don't want to have this rapist baby, I don't have the funds, or I don't want to have to travel to England, I can't, I'm in too much emotional distress, I can't get out of bed, I'm absolutely distraught, I really don't want to have this baby, and they're going to make me have this baby in Ireland because this is the way that the law is broken down. I really, really think that there should be. I'm not saying, there's pro-choice needs to repeal the 8 and stuff like that. I'm just saying that possibly maybe there should be a choice needs to be made whether women have the choice now to do this. I don't know. I'm not on either side. I'm not on pro-choice or pro-life. I really haven't made up my mind.
That is the most difficult one, but it has to be kept in mind that when they're proposing repeal at the moment, they're not just saying, oh, let's repeal it and look after the people who are raped. They're going to give us very wide-ranging abortion. So people have to think that if repeal goes through, if the repeal side wins, which obviously I hope it doesn't, but if it does, we are guaranteed very wide-ranging abortion, and in the short to medium term, that's what we're promised. In 83, you could argue it didn't make a practical difference. Abortion was illegal before and after, but now, if we repeal and don't hold on to the 8th, you're getting an abortion regime, very wide-ranging grounds, almost immediately through legislation. And it's hard to avoid the fact, but I think if the 8th goes, babies will die. Babies will die, and who's going to be responsible for that? There's going to be a huge cost in human lives, and there's also, I'm not even sure is it worth mentioning in the same breath, but there will be a financial cost as well, because the state and the taxpayers will end up paying for all these abortions as well. And we know, the health services is under severe pressure at the moment. You hear this controversy in the last couple of weeks about the pain patches and funds being withdrawn. And now you're going to have a huge other expense on the taxpayer. That's not the principal reason, but it's something they're not taking into account. I don't think they have thought it through.
If you think of it as, as you're saying, even the health side of it, do you not think a woman, just say an average, this woman has, after getting herself pregnant, she gets up one morning, gets a plane, just say to Manchester, gets an abortion in Manchester, she has to wait 1 hour to 2 hours after the surgery, just in the clinic or in the hospital, wherever she's getting it, and then she's getting the next flight back to Ireland. It can all be done in 1 day after major surgery. Just say, for example, she hemorrhages on the plane on the way back, which is possible, which does happen to women. Do you not think of a health view that would be safer for women? Yeah, because they're obviously doing it. There's 150,000 people.
That's right.
And
keep in mind that the 150,000 who've gone, there's 150,000 Irish babies that never came back again. But from the health point of view, there is an alternative. The alternative is to stay in Ireland and avail of the fantastically good maternity care that we have in Ireland, so that you end up with a live mother and a live baby at the end of the process. And to me, that's a win-win situation. The baby doesn't have to die.
I understand saying that way, but these women are doing it anyway. Say a woman's after making up her mind. This is my only thinking of it. A woman's after making up her mind. Obviously, we don't understand, know to the full extent of what it would be like. But a woman's after making up her mind. I'm going to have an abortion. Wouldn't it be safer for her to have it in this country by people that actually know it's her, not just someone going to England under a random name and being back to in the same day in many cases, or even the next morning? I just feel.
But it's safe. You can say it's safe for the woman, perhaps, but it's not. It's very unsafe for the baby, because if the abortion in England is successful, the baby dies. I think the safer thing to do is to have the baby in Ireland, to bring it to full term and see what happens then, so that you'll have two people safe and alive.
Yeah, but I'm saying she's already made her mind up. She's gone.
Yeah, but if people go abroad to do something that's illegal here, nobody uses the argument, well, let's do it here. So there's a lot of dodgy things one could do abroad, like things that are illegal in Ireland but legal in other countries. We could go down through a list of it. But it doesn't follow, therefore, that you must therefore legalise those things in this country to make it easier. Because if you make it easier, people will avail of it more, it'll become part of the culture, and more babies will die, where there is another way. That's a kind of a pro-life way where you can save both.
There is the saying like that. I understand you're saying that there is many illegal things in other countries that, maybe just for example, say in Holland, some drugs are legal and it's not here, but it's different in that it's like, only Malta have a higher stricter abortion law than Ireland. Is it showing that Ireland's kind of too much in the past?
No, I don't think so.
Because it isn't like it's just England. It's the rest of Europe.
It is
as a whole.
And my hope would be that sometime in the future, if we can hold out long enough, other countries will see the folly of what's going on. They'll look at the massive death toll from abortion around the world, and I think, and it's already happening in America to some extent, that I think there will be a rowing back. Even in England, I think they rowed back the limit from 28 weeks to 24 weeks, even though they allowed up to birth for disability cases and severe disabilities. So I would hope that if we could hold out long enough, the rest of those other countries will eventually see sense. Because some people say, well, if repeal gets through, that will sort the problem, but it won't. In every country, it's a controversy. So even if repeal gets through, it will be a hot issue. There'll be, arguments and over legislation for years to come, because I suppose the pro-life side will keep on protesting and trying to improve things. The pro-choice side will try to keep making it more liberal and more liberal until they get, totally pro-choice. So this is going to be with us for a long time. And I think saving lives, respecting the human rights of every person, not just the born people, I think is the way to go. And maybe eventually other countries will cop on. And you see, we're great now at looking back on scandals of the past, ancient Ireland and all the terrible things that went on. But I often wonder nowadays, what are we doing these days that 20 years they'll look back and say, how could they have done that? They knew what was going on. How didn't they stop it? And I suspect that abortion will be one of those things. And if we make the mistake of bringing it in, I think future generations will be very critical of us. And it'll be the scandal of the times in 20 years' time, as if we never learn. Do we always have to be discriminating against some group?
Yeah.
We always seem to want to have somebody we can discriminate against, whereas what I'm arguing for is an inclusive kind of approach that takes in equality of all people. And until we get that right, I think we're just going to keep on making the same mistakes.
I would say I'm only, say I'm 27, but even from my sister generation or from mother and fathers gone or aunties, I would say this generation is a lot more free thinking of a generation than what would have came. Would you agree with that?
That's probably true in lots of things, and people do stuff they wouldn't have done years ago, and that's probably the way things go, because parents' generation are always giving out about the youth of today. They were doing that hundreds of years ago. But when it comes to life and death issues, ending an innocent person's life, that's not a trend or not fashionable. That's just, I think anyway, plain wrong. And isn't it ironic that back in the 90s we got rid of capital punishment, where we decided as a country, and thankfully I'm absolutely supportive of that, we decided to get rid of capital punishment. So we decided, no matter what terrible things people are guilty of, we will not end their lives deliberately. And yet here we are now considering bringing in a law that will allow people to end the lives of innocent children. So we have no capital punishment for the guilty, but we have effectively a death sentence for the innocent. Makes no sense to me.
But we also brought in a law in 2015, and it was passed by, I think it was 62% of people voted yes to equality with legalising gay marriage. So look, we can go back and we can say Ireland of 30 years ago, it's an ancient way of thinking, we need to move forward and stuff like that, and we need to think into the future rather than the past and stuff. But what was your opinion when, and I just want to talk to you about that, in 2015 obviously we legalised, or not in 2015, in 62% voted to legalise same-sex marriage.
Just in the like how it would be relevant would be say if the referendum was in the same era as the referendum now for pro-life and pro-choice, just how much the country's kind of came on as a whole, that 62% of the country would have voted for that, where it would have been, I'm only guessing, an overwhelming no.
If you did it back in the 80s, that's probably true, because it was quite close. But look, like the thing is, I think the reason so many people voted that way at the time was because I think Irish people are inherently compassionate. You know, they want the best for everybody else and the new people. But and I think and I hope that it's the same compassionate views that they have deep down will make them see that bringing legislation that will end the lives of innocent children, babies in the womb, is not compassionate. And I know that the other side talks a lot about the compassionate, but only they're selective in their compassion. They'll only have compassion for the woman, which is right to have that. But what I'm arguing is for a compassion that embraces all people, not just a selection of them. And to go back to another referendum back in I forget now, let's say the children's rights referendum, I think it was 2013 or 2009 maybe. But anyway, like, we vote in there enthusiastically the rights of children, okay? And in fact, one High Court judge has already ruled that the rights we gave children in that referendum, in his opinion, apply to unborn children. Now, the government doesn't like that, and they're challenging that in the courts at the moment, which might well delay the referendum because they're waiting for a judgment. But, like, we bring in a referendum for children's rights, and then a couple of years later we bring in a referendum to take away children's rights. Like, it's just totally ironic and inconsistent.
Was that referendum, did that include, like you said, it's been in the Dáil and stuff now at the minute?
It's in the courts,
yeah. Yeah. Do you know, did people know, or was that when 2009 or whatever, was that for would be unborn as well? Or
no, that didn't arise really. It was more about giving the state more power to intervene in a family situation where they reckoned that the parents weren't looking after the child properly. In fact, there was a court case there only last week where parents were up in court because the child had missed so many days a huge number of days in school. And, like, do you know, one of the slogans of the pro-choice campaign is that, you know, trust women, and of course generally we do.
Yeah, Leo Varadkar came out and that was his, and I know he had used that was used in many pro-choice campaigns.
I know, but the whole point of the children's rights referendum, that while we trust parents, including women, most of the time there are abuses and there are situations where it doesn't work. So we don't look. The whole point about having any laws is that we don't trust ourselves, or we don't trust others to always do the right thing. If we could always trust women and trust ourselves, then there'd be no need for laws, because we'd always do the right thing anyway. We'd never speed, we'd always have our licenses and stuff. But human nature being what it is, we put laws in place there. And, you know, he'll also say, trust politicians. Well, the whole reason we have a constitution, I suspect, is to give the people, or to acknowledge the rights of the people in such a way that the politicians can't take rights away from us without going to the courts or a referendum. So I think some of those slogans are, you know, I don't think they stand up really.
One of the slogans that they have, that the pro-choice want, that they want full bodily autonomy for women, but they're saying, like, men have this, women don't have this.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be arguing against bodily autonomy, except in the case of pregnancy. There's two bodies there, so you have to respect the bodily autonomy of the baby. So if people are going to campaign on bodily autonomy, like, let them be for bodily autonomy for everybody, including the baby.
But you can't have it for two of them. Do you know what I mean?
You can. That's what happens most of the time in Ireland now. We have a very good record on maternal health, and the maternity health figures are among the highest in the world. So we have a good system where we look after, and the doctors look after both. That's why, I suppose, one of the pro-life campaigns is called the Love Both campaign, because we can, in the vast number of cases, look after both lives and bring, you know, the healthy mother, the healthy baby. That's the great outcome. So we can look after, and have been doing so for years and years and years, looking after the bodily autonomy of mother and baby.
Well, I don't think you can have a body autonomy of the two of them if the mother, whatever is going on with her, she's made up the decision, and like, it must be one of the most hardest decisions in the world to come to say that she doesn't want this baby for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But she doesn't want it. But then she can't get rid of it because she hasn't got the right over her own body. She has to leave the country, or her own country, to
but she chooses to do that.
Yes.
Yeah, she doesn't have
sometimes
to.
But she does have to. Like,
well, no, well, she doesn't.
if she's already made her mind up, this is my point.
Okay.
If she's already made her mind up,
yeah,
she has to leave the country.
Yes, but there was a choice to stay and have the baby. Now that is the choice that and the person chooses to go abroad and have the abortion, and that's what she does, and that's the way it is. And if the government was serious about encouraging women not to do that, if they thought that it was worth,
but look, that doesn't change the rightness or wrongness of it, but it just gives an advantage.
An awful lot more support, because there's a survey there recently sometimes why they had abortions, because
the pro-life doesn't get a fair
some of them felt no choice in the matter.
Just by the terminology that
were
they
being
use,
pressurised by boyfriends, for example, or parents, or workplaces, or
choice people
whatever.
Call so anti-choice, which I think is, I think that's unfair. I think it's putting people down. I mean, when you think about it, everybody is pro-choice or anti-choice depending on the topic. Say in relation to, I don't know, racism or other forms of child abuse, we're all anti-choice. We will not give people the choice to abuse children, okay? On other matters, say on capital punishment, I'd be totally anti-choice. I wouldn't give the government or anybody a choice to put someone else to death. It's just too drastic. And yet I'd be pro-choice on loads of things. So in a sense, to me, the terminology pro-choice, pro-life, everybody knows what that means.
Yeah.
So now,
I think it's very confusing to people, and even to us before we got Amy on last week, I hadn't a clue what pro-life meant. I didn't have I was trying to work it out in my head. What's one side going for, or like what is their beliefs and stuff, and what's the other side's beliefs? And even people I've been talking to yesterday, people my age, people a little bit older than me, they still don't understand between the two. Like, what is it? And I think there's a massive confusion out there. And like the media isn't painting a pretty picture for the pro-life, but they're not totally biased on the pro-choice side either. But it's something to talk about, it's something to discuss.
Yeah, I mean, if I just bring it back to even the money side of it, there, when they were saying, something like say 10,000 from Soros.
I was 137,000.
Or 130, say
a bit more.
But it's still not a drop in the ocean compared to the pro-life money.
Look, all I can speak for is Wicklow Pro Life, okay, and we get
that's fair enough.
The few bob that we have from passing around the hat at public meetings. Now, okay, and I do know that the national bodies are fundraising all the time to pay for the billboard, and I know they have church gate collections and they have personal appeals and so on to try and raise money to raise awareness. So, and I presume they're very careful, as far as I know, they're very careful to stay within the regulations of funding for campaigns and that kind of stuff. So, but you would have to ask. But to the best of my knowledge, the pro-life campaign that we would be loosely affiliated to is very, very careful that they stick to the SIPO regulations right down the line.
Some of the things that are like before the podcast started, I showed you an image there that I printed off when I was doing my just when I was doing the bit of research, that a big poster that was put out, a couple of posters, kind of a banner that was put outside a school there, and it was just, some of the images on it are just really distressing, and it's just kind of, there's one of a fetus and it's all bloody and stuff, and I know it's not nice to look at, it's really not. And like, what is your opinion on that? Because that is obviously coming from the pro-life side, so I
presume that's from a particular pro-life group, and there are many of them.
Okay.
Now, personally, I have to say that wouldn't be my way of campaigning. Putting photographs, huge photographs of aborted fetuses, and it is an unpleasant business on the street. To me, now that's only me, it wouldn't be my way of campaigning. I just don't like it. And in the same way, now, but I can't say that they're, in my opinion, that's not good. And yet I see people who are campaigning against animal cruelty. They'll be up often at the central bank, and they've got pictures of animals being torn apart at coursing meetings because they think the shock tactics make a point. All I can say is it's not my way of campaigning, it's not the pro-life campaign's way of campaigning.
Like, these are obviously extremists within the group.
Well, you see, I'm always hesitant to use words like extremists, because it's kind of, it's like me saying, I'm a moderate pro-lifer and they're extremists. Like, I'm not into name calling, so it's not a tactic I would use. I don't agree with it. On principle, I don't agree with it. It's not just that it's counterproductive. And yet at the same time, I always have a bit of a dilemma about it, because it's a strange thing. When the media discusses abortion, they never show what an abortion is. They barely even ever describe what an abortion is. Occasionally it sneaks in somewhere. So on every other topic that I ever hear discussed, especially if it's going to be a referendum, the media will investigate it, explore it, explain it. But there's almost a silence about what abortion actually is. And I find it a bit ironic that people take offence
at pictures that show the ugliness of abortion, but they don't take the same events at the actual abortion, which must be far worse than the picture.
But even there, like, you can't compare animals to babies, and like, even the amount of this going around, the pictures, the billboards, the cars driving around with the signs on it, like, that shows you how much money even the pro-life is having.
Yeah, after fundraising, like car stickers that somebody mentioned the last time.
No, but not even the car stickers. Even, you know, the vans going around with the pictures going around Dublin, and like, you know, I was listening to Vincent Brown the other night, and they're talking millions upon millions that are going into pro-life, where there is maybe 100,000 going into pro-choice.
I think that's been taught. Look, I don't have figures in front of me because I'm not in the higher echelons of those groups, and every pro-life group is different. Some have different models of funding, but as far as I know, it's fundraised in Ireland through donations and that, and people, you know, give generously. And
I heard
you'd have to go and ask other groups where they get the money from. You'd have to, because it's easy to throw out kind of ideas, well, they get the money here, they get the money there, but you'd have to have evidence of that, because, you know, again, you have to try and get to the neutral sources, send in a query to the different groups and say, well, because they have to be all transparent now, otherwise they're in trouble. And while we did find out, and it's in black and white, the figure that Amnesty got, you know, you'd have to go and prove, because it's too easy, there's too many charges and counter charges out there. You'd have to get the facts right on that.
Yeah, no, I did hear there was Russian money maybe put into it, so I hear
Russians are
they're getting blamed for everything these days.
So, but,
I doubt that the Russians wouldn't be known for their pro-life.
I know
their pro-life activities.
I'm going to give you two scenarios, Brendan, and it's just like it's probably going to be our ending topic, but I'm just going to have it here while it's in my head. If the Repeal the 8 amendment goes ahead, I'm not talking if there's no clauses or anything in it, what do you think will happen to Ireland as a whole, and what will happen to Ireland if the Repeal 8 goes ahead and pro-choice kind of wins?
Okay. I think it's fairly clear. You're going to get, let's say, and I hope it doesn't happen, but let's say Repeal wins in May, right?
Okay.
In the autumn, when it all comes back, if the government survives, they will then proceed to produce abortion legislation on the lines that they've already said. Unrestricted to 12 weeks. And of course they haven't thought that out, because they said, it'll be GP led, and of course immediately the GPs kicked up because they heard nothing about this, and I'm sure very many of them would be pro-life. So they'll bring in the bill. It'll be, and there are very wide grounds after 12 weeks. It's not just all about the first 12 weeks. They'll probably get that through the Dáil, and even if it was brought down to 10 weeks, I mean, it makes no difference. Maybe at 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 13 weeks, they're just arbitrary lines drawn. Nothing magical happens at those particular points. So whatever version, it's going to be abortion. Now, after the 12 weeks, it can be based on mother's health, mother's mental health, which are the same grounds as in England. And in England, it has led, contrary to what your guest said last week, it's 1 in 5 pregnancies end in abortion in England. It's about 1 in 13 or 15 for Irish abortions at the moment. And what will happen, I think, over a period is that the culture will change. Abortion will be more acceptable. It will happen here. It'll be availed of more and more. And eventually, I think we'll end up with similar figures. Now, could I make a point there that, you know, the Pro-Life did a survey that something like 100,000 lives have been saved by having the 8 there. Okay. And it was a conservative independent study. And, you know, there's 100,000 people alive because of the 8th Amendment, maybe some of them out campaigning, ironically, against the 8th Amendment. And when a group in Northern Ireland put up a similar claim on billboards in the north of Ireland, some people complained to the advertising standards people in the north, and the advertising standards people had a look at that figure, and they actually said that it was a credible figure. This back in 2017, in August, they said that the advertising standards said the assertion was not misleading, and there was a reasonable probability that it was largely accurate.
Okay.
So lives will be saved if we save the 8th. Lives will be lost if we let it go. And I think that is, a logical position to take. It's pretty obvious that it will happen, and like, we have to see where our responsibilities lie. Whereas if we don't repeal it and we hold on to the 8th, the government will have to sort out. They'll have to get serious about offering real supports to people in crisis, because I'm not going to deny there's crisis pregnancies and awful situations.
Yeah, like,
all I'm saying is don't end anybody's life over it. Put in every effort to look after both people involved. That's a humane society, and that can be done. And if the government puts their efforts into that, we will have a very, very humane and civilised and compassionate country.
Okay.
Do you think it's took so long to come, even the talk of it to come into Ireland, that it has been all over Europe? Do you think it's took so long because of the influence of, say, the church in Ireland? Do you think? Because if you say 83 when it was
originally
passed,
put in, yeah.
like the church would have had a major hold over the country compared to now.
I'm not sure about a hold, but we can argue that one backwards and forwards. As it is now, I suppose the church is one of many bodies who want the eighth to be saved. I notice in our own county, I've seen Fianna Fáil guy Pat Casey and has come out against repeal, and Andrew Doyle from Fine Gael has said he's against repeal and against the 12-week thing. So it's good.
Simon Harris is for repeal, is he?
Simon Harris is very much for repeal. That's another story. And because I don't want to start getting into personal things, so we'll let that stand at the minute.
Yeah.
So, sorry, to get back to your question.
Yeah.
Like, the country is full of influences. Okay, the church isn't as strong, the Catholic Church isn't as strong an influence as it was. And I noticed they're against it. The Church of Ireland has come out against current proposals. I noticed there in the Times, the former moderators of the Presbyterian Church have come out against it. I know a very strong evangelical thrust against repeal, but then there's atheists against it as well. In fact, I've come across whole groups of atheists against repealing the Eighth Amendment because they come at it like myself from a human rights point of view, so they can see the human rights logic regardless of religion.
But does the woman's human rights not come into the human rights as well?
Of course, absolutely, because
that's what I'm trying to, and it's like it's very, very hard to get this right. There needs to be clauses put into this referendum or this law. There need to be something that's put into this, rules or
I agree that there should be, like, it shouldn't be just willy-nilly, as you would say. That there shouldn't be just an easy option. You should be brought through counselling and everything put there in place.
But the pro-choice will disagree with you there, because they'll say, oh no, you can't be putting women through those hoops, you have to give them what they want, there has to be pro-choice down the line, and they will want it unfettered and unrestricted. So you have to I suppose really it's ultimately a clash of values, whether you think the right to life or the right of choice are more important. And I think looking at all the human rights documents, it's the right to life is it has to be the primary right, because without it, what other rights have you got if you're not alive? So right to choice is important, but it does not trump the right to life. And yes, you said the women's rights. Of course they do. That's the whole thing about the Eighth Amendment.
Yeah.
It respects both. It's and you know, another thing that a lot of people don't realise is in there, it protects the rights of mother and child as far as practicable. Now that little phrase is in other articles of the Constitution because they're not looking for outrageously complicated things. They're saying, look, as far as you can, save both lives. And that's it. And like most laws are like that. They're not expecting miracles or superhuman goings on. As far as practicable, and sometimes it is true in a crisis, you just can't save the baby. It's just not, or in an early pregnancy, if you don't, the mother in fact will have to get priority there because if you don't save the mother and the mother dies, the baby will die anyway, so the mother has to get priority anyway there. So you do, like doctors do here up to now, they do their utmost, and it's brilliant the work they do here. They do their best to save both. They may not, despite their best efforts, they may lose the baby, unfortunately, but that's not their intention in relation, in a case of abortion. It's the intention is to end the life of the baby, and that's what's so cruel about it.
Your opinion then, could I get your opinion on a life-threatening pregnancy, where if the woman has the baby that she is determined that she will die?
That's already in law since 2015.
No, but in do you remember that happened in 2012? I forget the woman's name. She was a doctor.
Yeah, that came into law. You get brought in a panel of...
Yeah, but...
That's for the 2013 bill, which was in the case of threat to women's life, or including the suicide ground. Yeah.
So we have that's a clause that we have now. Maybe I just feel that both teams can win here. Do you know? But there's
exactly that's my point. Exactly.
Points from
like so. And I think I don't know.
there was one of the cases that was complained about. The pro-choice I'd use. There was one of the Miss X or C, or I forget the letter they used to keep her anonymous, and the pro-choice side were lamenting the outcome there, but in fact the outcome was that the mother and the baby both lived. Now, to me, that's a win-win situation. But the pro-choice were complaining about that, and to me, the logic of their position, even though they mightn't say it or they mightn't think it out, is that it would have been better if she'd had the abortion and the baby was dead. I can't see the goodness of that.
No, there's all these, we can take statistics now, we talk about statistics and stuff all the time, and stories and one-off stories and stuff like that till the cows come home.
And they are one-off stories, and human stories are very very touching and moving, and I wouldn't for a minute try to pretend that the touching stories we hear from the pro-choice, they're there, they happen, but I would draw a different conclusion from them. And there are touching stories on the pro-life side, except that if the baby dies in abortion, that baby never gets to tell its story. The mother might be so traumatised she mightn't want to tell that story. Some women regret the abortion, some say they don't. It's like there's human stories on all sides, and I hope we hear all of the stories, not just the select few. And if people go to websites like One Day More and Love Both and Every Life Counts, you'll see lots of the pro-life side human stories, if you like.
Yeah. There is, and there's loads of, like you said, those three, for example, on the pro-life, and then I know Amy was mentioning in her shoes and all for it. Look, I don't think, we can go, we're coming up to 50 minutes here now, and I'm going to slowly wrap it up here, but I just want to thanks so much for coming on, so it takes a lot of guts to come on the show and just talk about this, because we got massive feedback. I think we got nearly 2,000 views there on our episode last week about pro-choice, and I'm sure we'll get a great response this week. So
can I say that I appreciate the level of debate and questioning, and I have found it here tonight all very respectful, and it's a pleasure, because sometimes I avoid getting into arguments with people about this, because you kind of know it's going to get hot. It is wonderful to be able to tease the ideas backwards and forwards without that happening, even if people can be passionate about it. Unfortunately, on social media, and yourselves, it can get very, and people who are even anonymous, and it gets abusive, and people don't engage with the arguments. They hear what they think they were going to hear instead of actually listening to the arguments and considering what's going on. So if there can be more of that,
we even said from before the first episode we were coming out, we were going to get two people on, let them have their say, and for the listeners to make their mind up of each side. We'll have our own points to take off the two years. To be fair, I thought two years talked really well.
It's just about, I just wanted to learn about it.
That's what we did. You wanted to learn a bit more.
I didn't want to go on the internet. I didn't want to go on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or even all these other.
Yeah, but you'll find on Twitter and Facebook, you'll find the people who are convinced on either side, or mostly convinced.
Yeah.
People like yourself who are wondering and trying to get a handle on it. You are part of a very large group out there that want to hear more about it, and I hope I've contributed a bit to that. But people have to engage, and as the lady said last week, people should be voting. Don't opt out. It's a right to vote. As you said, I think hard fought right. So find out what's going on.
Brendan, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming on. You're an absolute gentleman. This has been the Slip and Lip podcast. Thanks very much for listening.
Thank you.